Ah, the 90s, filled with so much good stuff like the Super Nintendo, Game Boy, PlayStation, dial-up internet, and so many accessories for these things to cash in on like the boomerang multi-tap and link cables. But this era was home to Pokémon hype, arguably one of Pokémon's greatest eras, as Poke Fever was everywhere. We had the games, the anime, cards, toys, and even religious contention telling us that Pokemon was somehow the spawn of the devil.
This is Pikachu. One thing I noticed about him right off was his tail. It's a lightning bolt, and it's a satanic Z.
So many wonderful memories. One thing was missing though, that's something we all needed at the time, and that was a Pokemon full-length movie. And then one faithful day, when watching cable TV with no way to skip to commercials, one commercial came on that would freak out every kid at the time. And that commercial was for Pokemon the first movie. And it was called the first movie at the time, like they already knew they had us by the balls and were telling parents, oh, you think your wallet's gonna be safe after this movie? No. We have like 50 more of these movies already planned out. And your kid's gonna bug you to see every single one of them. That being said though, I hadn't watched this movie in its entirety since I was like 13. I would watch some clips here and there on YouTube, but never from start to finish until recently. I decided to do just that, watch it from beginning to end, and you're probably thinking he's just gonna tell us he either likes it or he doesn't. And I'm here to tell you, no, it's not that simple. I think this movie is way more funny than I remember, from the dialogue, to the mistakes they made in the production, and to scenes I'm supposed to take seriously, but just find funny because there's something wrong with me. So let's run down this thing together, and just an FYI, I'm going to be strictly talking about the English dub version of the film. I already know about the Japanese version, that it included more serious scenes and themes, but I'm not here to discuss that, so if anyone in the comments is like, but yeah, you didn't talk about how the scene was better in the Japanese version, I know. I'm here to dissect the absurdity of the English dub. So, the movie starts out actually pretty well with introducing Mewtwo. He's just finished being completed after getting glimpses of Mew on the outside, and he asks the scientist questions about his birth and what the meaning to his life is. They basically tell him he's a clone of Mew, and they were experimenting to create the world's most powerful human-created Pokemon. Even giving him a name that's pretty on the nose, Mewtwo. Like, on paper that's just such a lazy name. Just adding 2 to the end of Mew, but honestly it sounds so good and rolls off the tongue. And also, ironically enough, I like how Mewtwo is supposed to be a clone, but was actually unique in a game full of clones. But I digress. When Mewtwo asks now that the experiment is done, what is to become of him? The scientists tell him they can now start the real testing. This pisses Mewtwo off, and he doesn't want to live out the rest of his life as a lab rat, so he destroys everything and everyone. I even love the line the last scientist says before he dies.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokémon, and we succeeded.
That was so well done. Then Giovanni, aka Ash's dad, shows up and feeds Mewtwo some BS to get him to go back with him, telling him that he sees him as a valuable partner. And Mewtwo, being 2 minutes old and not knowing any better, falls for this, and then ends up working and helping Giovanni and Team Rocket in all their endeavors. What I find neat here is that we even get a callback to the anime that teased Mewtwo prior by showing us the scene with Mewtwo battling Gary. Ash is extremely lucky he ended up fighting Jesse and James for that badge. Instead, could you imagine what would have happened if Ash had to fight Mewtwo at the time? After being Giovanni's errand boy, Mewtwo starts to get sick of it and starts to question Giovanni. And Giovanni tells Mewtwo outright that he is essentially his slave and never saw him as an equal. I mean, Giovanni is right here though. Mewtwo was never his equal. He's so much better. Honestly, Mewtwo should just be running Team Rocket. He could use his psychic powers to manipulate investors and the legal system.
Objection!
And as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So Mewtwo destroys everything again, and proceeds to fly off and essentially declare war on the entire world. This is a great prologue, as it sets up everything nicely and gives the audience all of Mewtwo's reasoning for hating the world in just a few minutes. I honestly wish we had gotten more scenes with Mewtwo, like actually getting his plans ready and showing us how he created his cloning machine, looking more into his inner thoughts and realizing what kind of mindset he was having while creating this plan. And maybe showing the audience a glimpse of him being compassionate towards the first clones he ever created, because he states later in the movie that he started with the 3 Kanto starters, and maybe he tells them when they're born that they have value and are important to him, and even giving them the choice to either follow him or go their own way. I think that would have been really cool, but we have no time for that. Here's Ash and he's hungry. Hungry for a battle? Cue the epic Pokemon theme song. Say what you want about English dubbed anime openings, but this song slaps hard, and it gets me pumped every time I listen to it. Also to point out, there's a scene in this opening that double plays for some reason. It's when Machamp comes out of his Pokeball, and they play it twice in a row for some reason. But in the other versions, it only plays once, and then it pans over to Ash for a bit. I have no idea why they did this and played it twice, but it's weird, and I noticed it as a kid, and it's bugged me ever since. After Pikachu takes down the rest of this random guy's Pokemon, we're introduced to Team Rocket, who's watching the kids from far away with binoculars. You know, that, in hindsight, that sounds extremely creepy. Mewtwo was also watching the battle over his GPS system, and sends Dragonite to invite them to his tournament. Once Dragonite gets there, they get a message from obviously not Nurse Joy, and Ash, Misty, and Brock agree to go. However, Team Rocket intercepts Dragonite and sees the invitation too, and follows Ash throughout the movie. Team Rocket has one particular scene that makes me laugh a lot, but we'll get to that later. Mewtwo then creates a storm to basically test the mettle of the trainers he's invited to see if they can get through it. As Ash, Brock, and Misty run into a nearby building to seek refuge from the storm, we're then introduced to some characters nobody's ever going to remember the names of. There's Bland Guy, Not Misty, and Cartman. Then we also meet this woman who tells some story that bores me every time I watch this movie, but mentions something about all the tiers of Pokemon reviving people.
Foreshadowing.
Anyway, her and Officer Jenny basically tell everyone not to try and go through the storm and wait for it to die down. They also mention that Nurse Joy has gone missing, and Brock says, when examining the poster,
"She sure looks familiar."
Now, before everyone jumps down my throat, I know it's alluding to the captured Nurse Joy, and he's remembering the hologram he saw. But honestly, gee, that line, "She looks familiar?" No shit, she looks familiar because maybe every time you bump into this bitch, it's in literally every town and city you enter. Are we sure this is really a Mewtwo origin story and not a Nurse Joy clone origin story, and how her clones have now taken over the world and infiltrated the Pokemon medical care system? I mean, come on, no wonder she looks familiar to Brock and everybody there. I mean, Nurse Joy probably delivered all 3 of them at birth. She was probably the first thing the 3 of them saw when they entered this world. After receiving all the exposition and warning from the literal police, just like real 10-year-olds, they say screw parental authority and go anyway. Now we get to another mistake this movie makes, and I see it, movie, don't think I didn't.
See? You see? Well, you don't see it? He moves! Right there! Wait! Right there!
Yeah, I guess that was just something they overlooked, but it did bug me when Gyarados came out and its lips were blue. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm so sad for noticing these things. Ash wants to go, but Misty says their Pokemon aren't strong enough to make it. Well then, Misty, Ash, and Brock, I said it as a kid and I'll say it again. Evolve your damn Pokemon. I mean, come on, how do you still only have a Squirtle at this point? But Team Rocket shows up disguised as Vikings to take them across the sea. This is where I started laughing more than I probably should have, at everything from the accents to their costumes is hilarious. To me anyway. They even make this joke.
Strong! Strong! Oh, I think I'm gonna have one.
Who would think in a Pokemon movie they would make a joke about having a stroke? Like, who thought of this when dubbing this movie? I refuse to believe this was a real line in the Japanese version of the film. This has English dub written all over it. But I do have to admit, that's the last thing I would think to hear when watching a Pokemon movie. So, you made me laugh, movie. Brock then states that he didn't know Vikings still existed, and then Ash hits us with this little nugget of information.
I didn't know Vikings still existed.
They mostly live in Minnesota.
Oh, now I get the joke. Eventually, their boat capsizes, and they use their Pokemon to make it to New Island. But I thought your Pokemon weren't strong enough, Misty. As Ash, Brock, and Misty make it to New Island, or as it should have been called, Mew Island, they run again into definitely not Nurse Joy. And she tells them that they are mistaken in thinking that she was the kidnapped Nurse Joy, and that the Nurse Joy they are looking for is in another castle. So she takes them to the meeting spot, and we see Team Rocket has made it to New Island as well. And Mew has followed everyone too. Then we get to this important scene explaining the complexities of the cloning process and what it has done to Mewtwo. And Mew is seeking out his fellow brother to mend his mind and undo the fractures that warp the fragility of reality on... I'm just f***ing with you, Mew just sits on a windmill and giggles.
Merchandising.
Ash, Misty, and Brock then enter the dining hall. I assume that's what this room is. And meet up with Ruby and Sapphire. And... No. That game's too good for you. You're still Cartman. They show off their Poke Fodder, and then Mewtwo comes down to meet them. We also get a glimpse of Team Rocket rummaging through the sewer system, and they stumble upon Mewtwo's cloning machine, and it gets some DNA from Meowth. Cutting back to Ash and the gang, a few of the trainers tell their Pokemon to attack Mewtwo. Mewtwo stops them easily and shows them what kind of power they're up against, then tells them that his grand plan is to create a storm that wipes out humanity and the existing Pokemon. Mewtwo then releases his human servant, revealing that it was indeed Nurse Joy all along. I haven't seen a reveal this insane since, well, Scooby-Doo.
It's Mario!
It's me, Mario!
Pikachu then argues with Mewtwo about how Pokemon and humans can be friends, but Mewtwo just thinks he's full of Pika shit. Mewtwo declares that no trainer can best him, then Ash's giant Pokeballs drop, and he tells Mewtwo to basically put up or shut up, and challenges Mewtwo to a match. Mewtwo shows off his Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard, and then opens up the stadium for battle. The trainers declare their original Pokemon will win, but we get introduced to some stupid nicknames at this point. I'll just say now, I am not one of those people that nicknames their Pokemon. I don't know why, I just don't like nicknames. But these nicknames they use in the movie, oh my gosh. So, Tracksuit's nickname for his Venusaur, I'm not gonna lie, I can never make it out. Is it Groot Root? Root Root? Fruit Loop? I don't know. This next one though. Shell Shocker. Like, who thought in the writer's room, you know what kids love? PTSD. So let's name a Blastoise after it.
Okay, first off, I don't have shell shock. You.
Then we have another reason I love Ash. He even says it doesn't have a nickname and sends out Charizard. That's why you're the best trainer in that room, Ash. You don't nickname your Pokemon. So they duke it out, and I have to say I love this scene. Everything from the battle animations to the music always makes me love it. And Mewtwo is clearly flexing because his cloning machine produced perfect IVs and allocated the EVs into the proper stat pools, so that his opponents don't have a chance in hell of winning. And then he proceeds to one-shot all of their Pokemon. Have to say though, I'm calling you out, Shell Shocker. You kinda suck. You actually got one-shotted by Rapid Spin, like, how do you even manage to pull that off? Charizard goes last and puts up the longest fight, but eventually goes down as well. Being the winner, Mewtwo declares that all their Pokemon will now belong to him, and he captures their Pokemon. Everything I have been told about trying to catch another trainer's Pokemon has been a lie. You lied to me, Game Freak. But let's be real, it wouldn't be the first time you've done that. I don't know why I think this scene is weird yet funny, but it shows Wigglytuff being captured, then immediately zooms in on Mewtwo, and I'm just thinking, it's gotta be one of two things here. One, he either really hates Wigglytuffs, or two, Mewtwo is somehow getting off to this, and that scares me. Ash tries to save his Pokemon by putting them into Pokeballs, but Mewtwo even catches the Pokeballs with his Pokeballs. It's some Pokeception stuff right there. Pikachu runs with Ash close behind, but eventually gets captured as well. Ash follows the balls down into the lab and screams, "You're not gonna get Pikachu!" Ash, my guy, do you not care about your other Pokemon? I get you have a special connection with Pikachu, but damn, that's cold. Now we get to another scene which every single person who has seen this movie should have noticed immediately. So the captured Pokemon go through the cloning machine, and Team Rocket keeps naming the Pokemon shadows of the Pokemon being cloned. And then we eventually get a scene of them calling Scyther's shadow Alakazam.
Goes Alakazam!
I mean, come on. In the anime, you have a whole section dedicated to this. Who's that Pokemon? And you were on point for that, but you f***ed up for the full-length animated feature? What the hell, guys? After that travesty, Ash saves Pikachu and the rest of the Pokemon, and then Ash marches outside like he's had enough of this shit. The music playing and how serious Ash is always gets to me, like he's becoming the Terminator or something. Ash then runs at Mewtwo trying to punch him. I mean, as stupid as this is, you have to give him credit. He's got guts. Obviously the punch does nothing. So Ash, with all his infinite wisdom, decides to punch him again. So Mewtwo decides to fling Ash so he can go splat on a wall nearby. Mew finally does something and saves Ash with bubbles. Mewtwo starts to fight Mew and explains that he is better than Mew. But while Mewtwo is talking, Mew is literally just fumbling around in the air. You know what? I don't even blame Mewtwo for being pissed. If I waited this long to confront someone, to have a serious conversation with them, and they started doing this, I would be pissed off too. So the copies and the originals charge at each other and begin to fight. Begun, this Clone War has. Now, here comes another scene I think is dumb and makes me laugh. I thought it was cheesy as a kid, and I think it's even worse now. The stupid brother song that plays. The message in this scene is so overbearing, it makes the Family Guy smoking clip look subtle.
What's that, Lassie?
Are you smoking yet?
And before anyone tells me this is for kids, I literally hate that excuse. For one, I was the target audience for this movie when it came out. I was the kid it was made for, and I thought it was stupid then, and I still think it's stupid now. And two, so many other family movies know how to deliver a message so much better without bashing you over the head with it. I mean, look at movies like The Lion King with Facing Your Past, or Beauty and the Beast with Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover, or if you want a more recent example, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish with Valuing Your Life. All these movies provide a good message without the use of cheesy gimmicks, so this part of the movie is still bad. Meowth and his clone, though, don't fight, and actually have a pretty meaningful conversation about, instead of focusing on the differences of the originals and the clones, maybe they should focus on what they share and have in common. A simple life lesson, but it's done actually pretty well here, and coming from Team Rocket of all people. I think it hits harder because they're typically the villains in the anime, and they're actually delivering a pretty good life lesson for the audience. All the humans look on and say that they can't bear to watch them fight like this. Honestly, I'm with you guys, I can't watch this either. It's so much cooler when they're using their special moves. Someone shoot a hyper beam. Or at least a water gun, for God's sake. All the Pokemon are tired at this point and look terrible, but Mew and Mewtwo are still going strong trying to kill each other. Ash has had enough though, and he runs in shouting for them to stop fighting. And you'd think if Ash ran into those beams, it would have ended up more like this. But instead, he gets turned to stone because that's how psychic blasts work, I guess. Mewtwo gets flustered because of what Ash did, sacrificing himself for them to stop fighting. And then Pikachu tries to wake Ash up, but it doesn't work, and he just keeps trying over and over again. Just having Pikachu constantly shocking Ash trying to wake him up with what little energy he has left, but it just won't work, and it's dead silent with no music or anything. It's really good. But then in my opinion, it kind of gets ruined later because all the Pokemon begin to cry and the Pokemon tears start to gather around Ash and heal him. But this scene isn't dumb because remember that lady at the beginning of the movie? She talked about how Pokemon tears saved people before, so because this was foreshadowed, it makes the scene good. Yeah, it's still kind of lame. I honestly would have just preferred if Mewtwo had have healed Ash himself after comforting Pikachu and telling Pikachu he was right the whole time about Ash being a good person and being friends with him. But magic tears, not the last time I would see magic tears in a movie anyway. After Ash is healed, Mewtwo starts to realize the error of his ways, and honestly gives a few poignant thoughts about life. And after all is said and done, Mewtwo flies off with Mew and the other clones, and tells Ash he is going off to learn what his heart already knows so well, and he will always remember what happened here. Then, because this is an anime movie and anime movies are never allowed to be referenced inside the actual anime, Mewtwo wipes the memories of everyone there and transports them back to where they were originally before coming to New Island. After getting back, Ash and the gang head outside and Ash catches a glimpse of Mew and tells Misty and Brock that when he started his journey, he saw a rare Pokemon and he thinks he just saw another one. And with that, they set out back on their Pokemon journey. We then cut to Team Rocket, who's stranded on an island, but they like it, so good for them. The camera pans out, and roll credits. So that was Pokémon the first movie. It has some good themes, Mewtwo is a great character, some cool scenes, great opening, and whether intentional or not, some very funny parts. There is some stuff I don't like about it. Some of the pacing seems to be off, the obvious continuity errors, and some stupid scenes and song choices, but overall it was fun watching it again after all these years. And out of the million Pokemon movies, I still think this is one of the better ones. But what do you guys think of Pokemon the first movie? Do you like it? Were you old enough to remember seeing it in the theater? Or do you dislike the movie? Let me know, I want to hear your thoughts too. Thanks for tuning into the video, and remember,
They mostly live in Minnesota!
gotta catch 'em all. Nath out.